Ryan, there might be some people who say that he is, you know, third term or as Mayor of London. He is the most senior Muslim politician in this country, but also violent crime has soared 30% from 190,000 incidents in 2016 when he first came to power to 250,000 incidents in the past year. What's your take on this, Ryan?
Well, I think when it comes to knighthoods, I think it depends on which side of the political divide you are on. I think people can find fault in absolutely any honour. I mean, I was listening to a radio phone-in last night, and people are angry at the fact that Gareth Southgate got a knighthood, and he took the England team to a couple of finals. But I think when it comes to Sadiq Khan, I think there is particular anger from the Tory side of things, particularly because they talk about every single target that he set himself or was set, whether it comes to housing or crime or knife crime. He seemed to miss it. And we hear this phrase being used, rewards for failure. And from that side of the political fence, it seems like, you know, there's absolute anger. And also, don't forget the ULEZ row
yes.
you know, that was brought in a couple of years ago. We had the expansion back in August last year. And I think people are still very, very angry about that. So I think it depends on where you sit on the political divide. And as you mentioned, Gavin Williamson obviously splits opinion. So I think you pay your money, you take your choice on these.
There's no real rhyme or reason, is there, Ryan, to honours? And some, you know, Gareth Southgate, some would say he served his country very, very well. He's brought the England football team to a much greater glory than they had certainly for some years. Maybe he should get a knighthood. There are almost, you know, there are almost no honours that come out there that people say actually 100% that person should get that honour. Even last year when Alan Bates became Sir Alan Bates, for example, the man behind the post office, exposing the scandal and representing those people, and we see 4 more of those people. We hope to speak to one of them later on, actually, who has received an honour. Well, actually, some people will say, well, they should be given greater honours, or maybe the honour isn't enough. Maybe this is actually something that is given to them because it's sort of a consolation prize for some of the compensation that hasn't come to them so far for a scandal that shouldn't have happened in the first place.
Yeah, no, I think the trouble is when you give these honours to sitting politicians, I think that makes it even worse in a way, because they are still there, they are still serving, they're literally to be got at. And even when there was talk at the beginning of December that Sadiq Khan was very, very likely to get a knighthood, and a petition was set up by a Conservative councillor, I should add, and that has already got, you know, at the beginning of December, 200,000 signatures.
Yeah, we've spoken to him in this programme a number of times, Matthew Goodwin Freeman as well. Yes, he's contributed to this programme, and certainly there are a lot of people who feel very, very strongly about it, not least Neil, who has been in touch, he says, from Labour-obliterated Wales, as he puts it. So Khan and Southgate get knighted, typical Starmer, rewarding people for mediocrity and failure. Sums Labour up in a full race to the bottom, in Neil's opinion. And Mark on the Isle of Wight says, is it because the left want to ban horse racing that no one from that sport was on the honours list this year? I'm not familiar with the entire honours list, Mark, but certainly I think what that illustrates is that there are many people who have opinions on this and always will. Ryan, I wonder if I could take you to another part of the news, and this is the fact that we're expecting probably tomorrow that there will be New Year's messages from Kemi Badenoch and Keir Starmer. We don't know what's in them just yet, but what we do know is that Nigel Farage, the leader of Reform UK, has put out a message actually from the birthplace of Winston Churchill, Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire, and we can just have a little look at what he has been saying now.
I want to say this to you. If you agree with what we're trying to do, don't just sit back and nod. Do something about it. Join those 150,000 people who've already joined our party, because I promise you this, the only way we win, the only way we mend broken Britain, the only way we get reform in our country that so badly needs it, is if you, who agree with us, join our people's army.
And Nigel Farage talking about the fact that 150,000 people have joined Reform UK. It now has a larger membership than the Conservative Party. I just want to play one more clip about what he has been saying in his New Year's message and then get Ryan Sabey's reaction.
You know, the fish rots from the head down. We have been appallingly led in this country now for several decades. We are in societal decline. We are in economic decline. Most people are getting poorer with every year that passes. We're losing any sense of national identity. And we're actually teaching kids at school that people like Winston Churchill, born in this palace, are bad people and that our country's history is something to be ashamed of.
Well, that's Nigel Farage there. He had a much longer message, about 6 minutes or so. I'm sure you can find that online if you want to see the whole thing. But Ryan, what is your reaction to what Nigel Farage is saying, putting it out on New Year's Eve, perhaps understanding, as I think Reform UK have over the past few days, that actually the time between Christmas and New Year is actually a good time to get stories out and to get your message heard right across the country?
Yeah, it can be a very, very fruitful time for certain parties. And I think particularly if you are on the rise like Reform is. And I think the one thing that Nigel Farage has done very well there, he's got a fantastic setting. He's gone to Blenheim Palace. He almost makes himself look statesman-like. And I think one thing that Nigel Farage is doing that the Conservatives aren't doing is kind of filling that void. Kemi Badenoch, it seems like she doesn't want to have any concrete policies, or she doesn't want them for a fair while. She says that she's a scientist, an engineer, and she will take her time in coming up with policies. Well, if she's going to take her time, there's one person who's going to fill that gap, and that's Nigel Farage.
And it's really interesting, Ryan. It's really interesting. I mean, the headline there's a very good website called Conservative Home, which I know you read, as do really lots of politicos. And its main story today, after, basically about 10 weeks, or not even 10 weeks of Kemi Badenoch, is how long has Kemi Badenoch got before she really has to make a big impression and can stop the doubters? Given that that's been said already, given that Keir Starmer has only been there for, roughly 6 months or so, and he is, people are doubting his leadership and there are whispers about his leadership and so on, is this just part of politics? Is this just what happens, do you think, Ryan? Or actually is there a bigger problem first for Kemi Badenoch and then for Keir Starmer?
I think it's a bigger problem for Kemi Badenoch, because I think the peel off of voters to Reform mainly comes from the Conservatives. So I think Kemi does have a real issue, and she has to fill that void, and she has to do it very, very. I think one thing to mention is one real test will be at those local elections in May. Now it's maybe 3 or 4 or 5 months away. But if she doesn't do particularly well then, and then Reform do particularly well, not only in England, but also do particularly well in Wales, they have the momentum. And what we call in politics the big mo, that is with the Reform Party. So I think Kemi Badenoch, I don't think she should be looking over her shoulder just yet. But I think things could get very sort of hot under the collar if the Conservatives look like they're going to lose a lot of council seats and councils themselves. And I think going into this election this year, I think the Conservatives come from a particularly high point from 4 years ago, when the Conservatives were doing very well after the vaccine rollout and the COVID, what was going on at that time. So Kemi just has to watch her back slightly and just make sure that she does give enough red meat or enough policy to her members and supporters to keep them happy.